Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome friends once again to our NPTEL MOOC module on health economics. After covering the unit on economic evaluation of healthcare, it is the time indeed for us to explain how far our healthcare system is efficient. Hence our this particular unit is targeted accordingly, and we have carried with the contents on health efficiency. We are in big number 10, that's why it is called unit 10. And on the very first lecture we will discuss on the concepts of productivity and efficiency as part of the health efficiency. So here are the goals. First goals of this particular lecture. First one is to understand productivity and efficiency, then basic models of healthcare efficiency, then demand for efficiency in healthcare, then problems in selecting models in healthcare. Now I will just give you the background of the productivity and efficiency analysis. We start by an example. One is if you have a, there is a sew factory that uses various materials including labor, capital to produce shoes. Hence, we can clearly differentiate the input and output in this context. Output is of course, since we have restricted to shoe factories, so the output is shoes production, and the input are like materials and raw materials, labor and capital, etc. Then how to measure the performance of the shoe factory? This is either by productivity ratio or by performance ratio or by rate of performance and performance indicators. First, by productivity ratio we mean that the ratio of output to input is checked. A larger value of ratio indicates better performance, whereas the performance is a relative concept. When we say performance, productivity is also of course a quantitative unit or in terms of ratio, whereas performance is a relative concept which can only compare performance of one year to another or performance of one factory to other. It is not just performance by itself is standing clear. The term productivity and efficiency often used interchangeably, but they are not precisely the same thing. Productivity of a producer means the ratio of its output to its inputs of an organization. Here organization we mean it is output by input. Output O stands for organization. So the ratio is indeed defining us the productivity, whereas in efficiency we are actually comparing between observed and optimal values of its output and inputs. So productivity of a particular firm in compared to the firm having its maximum productivity. So where that particular unit maybe a DME unit or maybe a particular firm in the competition is standing different than others, it's basically a comparison with their maximum productivity in this context. So efficiency is defined as maximum productivity in the denominator and productivity of that particular firm in the numerator. Hence we can understand whether that firm is performing better or not as comparable to others. We have also given an example here. You can just mark the difference we want to say that let us assume single input and output form, and there are different forms we have listed, and they are usually called DMUs, decision making units, and these are at this moment we have kept 5, and their individual input and output is mentioned the next columns as x and y. Hence, the productivity is calculated as, for the first form, this is calculated as 2 by 5, okay, and so hence it is 0.4, and similarly 6 by 30, etc. That is simply called output by input. And understanding efficiency, as we have already mentioned, that it is the particular score out of the maximum score among the DM units or among the firms or in the competition. So, here you can easily see the maximum is here, this is 0.4 is productivity. So, that means in the denominator we are going to keep it as 0.4, 0.4. In the numerator it is the individual firm 0.4. So, this is 0.2 divided by 0.4, it is 0.5. Okay. So, by this approach you can able to clarify the difference between the simple difference between productivity and efficiency. Now, you can easily infer number of things. Now, this form A is coming out to be the best one in terms of its efficiency, since the efficiency score is 1, and the best relative unit of measurement of efficiency is considered to be the 1. And so others are relatively important, like 0.75 is there, another 2. They are even better than other, like in C is better than B, and firm E is better than D and B, etc. Okay. So, the value of the efficiency score matters to compare whether they are efficient enough or not. Productivity and efficiency by definition, by concepts, once again we have started explaining productivity as ratio of output to input, and usually this is considered to be an absolute concept, whereas efficiency is a score, it is actually derived relatively. We are finding the relative value which is comparable. Productivity of a firm is compared to the firm having maximum productivity in case of efficiency, and comparing observed output to maximum potential output obtainable from the input, and also we are comparing observed input to the minimum potential input to produce the output. And this here we can also compare with the minimum observed input to the minimum potential input, and in case of output we are actually comparing the maximum output to the individual observed output. And in some cases also the combination of these two can also be considered to identify the efficiency score. The literature on frontier production and cost production and the calculation of the efficiency measures begin with the two important writers, Debrew in 1951 and Farrell in 1957. So, we refer to their work on frontier production and cost function, and especially the calculation of efficiency. Farrell in the writing suggested that one could usefully analyze technical efficiency in terms of realized deviations from an idealized frontier isoquant. And usually measured through the radial measures. We will discuss in our next one and next lecture. And coming to the application of efficiency and productivity analysis, there are different findings by different authors. They by Ohm and Yu in 2004 paper, they explain for airport, then Burke and Lina 2003 and Burke in 2002 paper applied the efficiency and productivity analysis for the dentistry, and hospitals community and rural healthcare, bank branches, even in there are some works from WHO and nursing home, etc. There are different papers we have cited. For your interest, I think you can go through, will be useful. Okay. Now, why is it necessary? Efficiency analysis in healthcare, why it is required? You can also take the word as demand for efficiency analysis. Okay. There are some indicators which will clarify why efficiency analysis is so urgent and so needed, not just for the researcher, it is also for the policymakers, even the producing unit or the supplying units, etc. We will start by explaining policymakers perspective here. So, efficiency has become a central objective of to the policymakers. They assure that such expenditure is in line with citizens' preferences. When the efficiency scores of each public provisioning healthcare units are concerned, when we see that expenditure in line with the citizens' requirement, then it's perfectly fine. Efficiency score will actually give us a direction in terms of further policy making. So, like as I just said, it is as per the citizens' preferences, and expenditures are viable and justified, particularly when many sources of finance such as tax revenues are under acute pressure. Okay. Now, coming to another indicator of efficiency analysis and its need is called cost effectiveness. How minimum cost we require, whether that minimum cost allocated to deal with the citizen services are actually finding the best output is indeed required, and this cost effective analysis is analogous to the economics concept of cost effectiveness, and and also referred to as accountants concepts of value for money. Another one is called potential customers need. The potential customers for measures of efficiency include governments, regulators, healthcare purchasers and healthcare providers, and the public. And so far as supply side directions are concerned, health technologies are changing rapidly, and there are pressures to introduce new technologies are often irresistible, and uncertainty about cost effectiveness as well. So far as supply side perspectives are concerned in provisioning the services to the public. So, if efficiency scores are really justifying enough, it would be indeed good to supply that product for especially in healthcare. And there are demand side perspective as well, like aging population pose particular challenges, typical challenges for the design of healthcare systems. Some healthcare system might require modifications, and since the society is aging day by day, a number of developed countries have already experienced the problem of aging, and there are natural occurrence of diseases which require further attention from the supply side. Hence, the demand side matters since it is posing certain requirements. Expectations are becoming even more challenging and difficult to deal with. Now, healthcare purchases, what type of purchasers are important? Those who are purchasers of healthcare, it has a serious information difficulty when negotiating contracts with providers. People find difficult to judge whether providers are offering good value for money. Purchasers to understand better the performance of their local providers relative to the best practice and introduction element of yardstick competition into the purchasing function as mentioned in this work. So, now we are discussing some important starting point of productivity and efficiency analysis. One is called DMUs, decision making units, you can read as DMU. Alright. We have also mentioned here the focus of efficiency analysis is an organizational locus of production, often referred to as decision making unit. It is used to describe the production entity which turns input into output. For example, hospitals, farms, industry, power plant, banks, etc. These are used to be considered as the DMU units for analysis. And like here we have mentioned in healthcare, examples of DMU can include entire health system, we can analyze this, purchasing organizations, whoever are purchasing healthcare products, hospitals, physician practices, individual physicians as well, how far these are actually competing each other and how far their productivity is reflected better, whether it is still needed or not. DMU units are relevant for analysis. What is the basic structure of the productivity and efficiency analysis? Here we have presented a very naive model of organizational performance from authors. We have cited the authors at the end. There is our readings, important readings. So, I start with the cost to the output as the benefit out of the cost. Cost might include different set of inputs, and they combiningly dealt with a variable called cost that might be actually carried with certain weights, and maybe through index is defined based on this, and that will translate into cost function. Similarly, there are different indicators of output even in healthcare system, doctor to patient ratio, healthcare facilities, etc. They are all part of maybe the structure. Whereas when I say output of healthcare, maybe the number of treated persons over time period, maybe an output, maybe number of the cost minimization, maybe an output, okay, and maybe number of persons who have responded better feedback out of their consultations. If that can be numerically presented, can also be considered an output. Input side, there are a number of ways where we understand in healthcare. Input may be doctor to patient ratio, or maybe hospital beds, etc. out of a proportion. There are various ways by which we can understand the organizational set of to understand the production and efficiency analysis. Okay. So, the organization consumes a series of m physical resources of inputs and valued in total as x by society. Some transformation process takes place, that is production of S output, which society values in aggregate as y. Therefore, when we say there are different indicators which are affecting the cost either or the input, here is our input or and this is our output, and combiningly we can derive one variable through their respective weight. So, here we since there are multiple possibility of output, we have to carry the relative weights. Here it is WS, and the weights are basically their relative importance so far as the additional output is concerned, and this is presented here. This is our output combiningly. The indexed value of the output, that is precisely the function of the individual outputs. So, and then their relative weights at ith unit, this may be your I and this may be your I. S is your I, and I stands for if there are S number of units, you can actually go through accordingly, and O stands for the organization, and hence we can calculate a single variable that will be representing as output, and there are multiple inputs as well, and similarly we have to carry their individual relative weight. And here M stands for the ith unit of or jth unit of inputs, and accordingly we derive their indexed representative variable x. If we have information on the magnitude of W and WS, that is for the output, and Wm for the inputs, we can readily compute the efficiency as the ratio of y upon x. In competitive markets, both Ws and Wm might be readily observed as prices. Overall efficiency is measured by applying weight factors of, that is, weight factors are here Ws and your Wm respectively for output and inputs, and hence efficiency score is the output factors to the input, to the output value to the input value after converting into an index. Okay, so we have already discussed in competitive markets both Ws and Wm might be readily observed as prices, as we already discussed. So, in the health domain, rarely prices are observed, particularly on the output side, and for weight, those two respective weight analytic techniques can be developed to find out. The production of most healthcare outputs rarely conforms to a production line type technology, where a set of clearly identifiable inputs are used to produce a standard type of output. Model building principles in healthcare have many issues, such as what is the appropriate unit of analysis, then what are the outputs of the healthcare, then what value should be attached to the outputs, and what inputs are used in the production of these outputs, and how should these be valued. What environmental constraints are also faced, some environmental constraints should also be discussed. So, at this moment we are emphasizing on unit of analysis is an important indicator. There are three criteria to guide the choice of the unit of analysis. Usually we start by emphasizing on the a unit of analysis actually should capture the entire production process of interest. That may entail defining artificial units of analysis as well. There should be the DMUs, decision making units, that is a function. The function is to convert inputs to outputs, and that the DMUs have discretion about the technological process by which this conversion takes place. The units comprising the analytical sample should be comparable and seeking to produce the same set of output. So, what are the outputs in healthcare sector, the unit we are discussing? In competitive industries, the physical output is basically a traded product, maybe your washing machine, cooler, etc. It varies enormously on various dimensions of quality, such as reliability or look or temperature range, etc. Many parts of the economy, prices not exist, and outputs are also difficult to define. And it is actually true for many of the goods and services to which government spending is devoted, as mentioned by Atkinson paper in 2005. Health sector in particular, where government role is very pivotal and very important. So, defining outputs is indeed problematic in healthcare sector. Healthcare is rarely demanded for its own sake. It is indeed derived. Demand derives it actually derives, and the belief that the healthcare will make a positive contribution to the health status, and hence there are consequences for the better consequences for the society. Output of healthcare considered in two broad categories. One is additional health conferred on the patient, and broader patient satisfaction over and above the relative to the health effect. In efficiency model is actually developed according to the purpose of the analysis, maybe for the short run, narrow short run or long run period, where we are supposed to disaggregate the analysis using of the existing resources whatever available, and disaggregate inputs to reflect the resources currently at the disposal of the management. Whereas in the long run cases, longer term analysis, that is less constraint analysis, and a single measure of total cost, adequate indicator of physical organizational inputs, etc., are relevant. Okay. Coming to another important point of analysis of productivity and efficiency, and their constants. One of the constants we mentioned is environmental constants that restrict comparison only to organizations within a similarly constrained environment. These models the constant explicitly as being analogous to factors in the production process, and this undertakes risk adjustment as well. How to accommodate these influences, environmental constraints. Sometimes authors suggested that cluster analysis is suggested. We need to compare the like with like or the similar families categories, and incorporate environmental factors in the model, treating them as exogenous input analogous to the labor or capital which were considered. And so far as risk adjustment is concerned, we need to adjust organizational outputs for differentiation circumstances before they are deployed in an efficiency model. Okay, so after saying so, we need to address some practical challenges as well as part of our conceptions on productivity and efficiency analysis. There are serious lack of information in some indicator related to performance. Time series are often short and interrupted by structural changes. Missing data for some organizations, sample sizes may also create some kind of disturbances that might be too small to draw inferences. So, overally, which I already said, we are starting with an organizations. We will be comparing its output to from its inputs. Yet this is our standard basic model. However, there are so many factors we need to take count, like T minus 1 period to T plus 1 period of endowment, exogenous inputs. Okay, some system constraints may be there, like policy constraints, physical constraints, etc. And they are joint output by output as well, integrated care research, teaching, etc. And external output such as productivity, independence of the system should also be somewhere included in the analysis. Therefore, we have made a caution that potentially high sensitivity of the results to model specification and data errors are important. Great attention to sensitivity analysis or experimentation with different model specifications, and caution with drawing definitive judgments on the efficiency of individual organizations. It has to be noted that never be feasible to accommodate all the issues summarized in the above figure into the efficiency analysis, and we should be aware of which factors are most likely to affect the model for consideration. Okay, so these are all as the very foundation to productivity and efficiency analysis. In our subsequent lectures, we will be emphasizing in detail. In between, I think these 3 readings are important. We have also cited their chapters. You can follow, and I think it is suggested to you, and then only you can able to address all the questions in the exam. And what are their details, we will also go by a detailed schematic presentations of entire possibility of productivity and efficiency. We will be certainly emphasizing the deep software, and will emphasize different conceptions of measurement, data environment analysis, and input and output oriented DA, constant returns to scale DA model, and variable returns to scale model, and scale efficiency. So, these will be emphasized how far this is going to change variable returns and scale efficiency, etc., in our next lecture. With this, I must thank you, and expecting you to be present in our next lecture. Thank you.